Hello everyone, welcome to Analog IAS Current Affair Analysis for 11th June 2021, and these are the articles we'll be dealing today. The Rope of Federalism and an Unwanted Tug of War. This article is in the context of Alapan Bandyopadhyay, whose tenure as the Chief Secretary of West Bengal expired recently and has been directed by the Department of Personnel and Training to appear before it last week. The controversy over the sudden recall of this IAS officer demonstrates the tensions between center as well as West Bengal government. So this is a purely political issue according to some of the political commentators. So Mr. Bandyopadhyay is a 1987 cadre IAS officer and was serving as the Chief Secretary of the West Bengal government. His service term was supposed to expire on May 31st, that is last month, and on May 24th, the state government requested the center for extension of Bandyopadhyay's tenure by 3 months, citing the crucial role played by him during the management of Cyclone Yas. And also he was dealing with the coronavirus pandemic in the state. The center agreed to the West Bengal government's demand. So the issue was settled there. However, on May 28th, the center directed Bandyopadhyay to report to the Department of Personnel and Training in Delhi by May 31st. And again it was postponed to June 1st. So, calling the center's decision as unconstitutional and illegal, CM Mamata Banerjee wrote to the center saying the state government cannot release and is not releasing its chief secretary in this crucial hour. The government at the center did not take cognizance of this fact, and there is no decision taken. After this, CM of West Bengal, Mamata Banerjee, went ahead and announced the appointment of Bandyopadhyay as a government advisor for 3 years to stop him from leaving for Delhi. So, what led the center to recall Mr. Alapan Bandyopadhyay is what we have to understand. So, the reason, according to certain speculations, is that Mr. Bandyopadhyay got caught in the tussle between CM Mamata Banerjee, and he did not attend a review meeting on Cyclone Yas with Prime Minister Modi, as BJP MLA Mr. Suvendu Adhikari, who had defeated her in Nandigram during the recent assembly elections, was also present there. So CM Banerjee and Bandyopadhyay decided to skip the scheduled meeting, and later that day PM alone had to meet both of them, that is CM Banerjee and Chief Secretary Bandyopadhyay, and submitted their proposals for 20,000 rupees or 20,000 crore rupees for relief funds required for tackling the impact of Cyclone Yas. Is this center's recall unusual? That is what we have to understand. In case the center decides to recall an IAS officer from a state, generally the procedure that is followed is the state government or the officer, or sometimes even both, are asked for their willingness to the proposal. So consent of both state as well as officer is required as a precedence generally. In this case, neither CM Banerjee or the state government nor the officer showed any willingness. So the initial extension to Bandyopadhyay was given by the appointments committee of the cabinet itself, and this includes the Home Minister Amit Shah as well. The manner in which the decision was reversed within 4 days and 2 days before the scheduled retirement of the officer raised many questions. So the question was, what if Bandyopadhyay did not report to the DOPT? DOPT is actually the authority to control IAS officers and their cadres. It is directly under the Prime Minister. So DOPT holds the power to issue a show cause notice. A show cause notice will be issued, and the officer is supposed to give an explanation. The future course of action will be dependent upon the response given. And in this case, full pension could be taken away only after the matter is solved. So there are certain rules like All India Service Rules of 1969. So they have provisions for minor and major penalty that can be imposed on the officer if the government decides to pursue the matter against him. These rules actually have a provision that states should be consulted before officers are called back. However, the center says that the rules are very vague and it does not make them mandatory. And if we take a look at the experts, if we have to respect the federal structure of our constitution, we have to give prominence to the consent of the states in such a scenario, because otherwise the principle of federalism itself will be questioned. Now this article is a commentary on how this entire issue was actually not wanted and how it will hit the values of federal principles in our constitution. So action was actually initiated against Mr. Bandyopadhyay under section 51B of the National Disaster Management Act of 2005, and this is for failing to comply with center's decision to attend the review meeting. So this author thinks that it is a very absurd interpretation of the provision that is meant to deal with the cases of defiance of lawful orders given by the competent authorities. It is not a law that can be used, according to the view of the author, for dealing with center-state relations. So trying to do that will actually hit the relations of the center with the states and attack the federal principles. So what is the problem here? How do we maintain a balance? So should the All India services be tilted towards the states, or just because they are given employment by the center, they should be towards the center? There is a need to maintain a balance. If you take a look at the UPSC exam, you have All India services like IAS and IPS. They are definitely recruited by UPSC, that is a central body, but you have to understand the fact the purpose of creating this All India cadre is to provide uniformity in standards. So ultimately these officers will be working under state cadres and will be taking directions from the state governments itself. So in this position, we have to understand the differences between IAS and IPS officers and other services which are recruited by UPSC, which are a direct central controlled services. Now the problem is, at the state level, if an IAS officer is working just by taking directions from the center, that will be biased. And similarly, if the IAS officer is seen tilting towards the state, even then he would be accused of being biased. So how do we maintain this balance? So for this section, we have certain code of conduct. That code of conduct should be as clear as possible, and whenever a officer is working in tandem with the state's objective, if the grounds are justifiable and reasonable according to the rules laid down in the All India Service Rules of 1969, center must refrain from taking arbitrary action, and that is what this article is trying to say. That is the gist of this article. Making peace with nature. This article is in the context of the UN decade on ecosystem restoration. So what is the necessity for ecosystem restoration and how it will help India is the focus of this article. So before we get into the second part, that is how it will help India, let us understand this UN decade on ecosystem restoration. So FAO, that is the Food and Agricultural Organization, declared 2021 to 2030 as UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Similar to other international decades, its purpose is to promote UN agenda or United Nations goals. And this particular project is specifically to facilitate a global level cooperation. Obviously, when you are talking about scale at a pan India level and across the globe, we need an organization like UN at a global level and the central government at the national level to coordinate with the states. So let us understand at the global level first. So this program is meant to facilitate the global level cooperation for restoration of degraded ecosystems. Now, in our basic economy classes, when you're talking about ecosystems, they are classified as terrestrial or land-based ecosystems, water or marine ecosystems, and you have other sort of ecosystems which are a combination of land and water, and certain other ecosystems at a micro level, and not caring for them will actually lead to desertification, which is something that we cannot afford because there is absolutely no productivity in this kind of lands. With the growing population, we only need to increase our resources, but the problem is land and water, they are pretty finite. You cannot exploit them beyond a reasonable range. So there is a need to handle the biggest problem of our century right now, that is climate change. It is much bigger than the COVID pandemic, and the lessons that COVID pandemic has taught us is to respect biodiversity, and there are certain boundaries set by nature which we should follow. Following this will lead to food security as well as a continuous water supply. So in our basic topics of environment syllabus, we will be reading something called ecosystem services. So the purpose of this entire initiative was actually to safeguard the future's services that ecosystems can afford to give us in a sustainable manner. Previous to this, we had 2011-2020 decade as a UN decade on biodiversity. Now that time has passed, we have to expand our horizons to the ecosystem restoration, and that is the reason FAO went ahead and created this program. So in February, UNEP actually released a report by the same name, that is Making Peace with Nature, and identified what it called as planetary emergencies. And within that planetary emergencies, we have obviously climate change and biodiversity loss. Of course, there is the usual problem of pollution as well. What is the collective impact of these planetary emergencies? It will lead to inequalities. These inequalities get so exaggerated and exacerbated that the rich will become richer and the poor will become poorer. Just to quantify this inequality in economic growth, it is estimated by this report by UNEP that we have 1.3 billion people who are hungry and poor. So this will definitely impact our SDG performance across the globe. So the current mode of development degrades Earth's finite capacity to sustain human well-being. That is the central reason why we have to focus on the sustainable development goals. This report talked about how we have to use human knowledge along with technology to safeguard our environment. So economic and financial systems must be transformed to lead and power the shift towards this sustainability, and therefore UN had to take this decision to declare it as a decade of ecosystem restoration. Now, what is the strategy that UN suggests for moving towards this ecosystem restoration? At a global level, we have the Paris Climate Deal plus SDG goals to follow. Nothing complicated, just the basics, sticking to the basics. So this is the agenda that across the world we have to follow. Now let us come back to the second part of the article, that is how India is faring and what is India's strategy with respect to this. So firstly, we have to understand that even prior to the Paris deal, we have something called the National Action Plan on Climate Change. Under this National Action Plan, there are 8 submissions. These submissions will together contribute to a sustainable environmental protection. Apart from this, in 2015, in the Paris climate deal, we have set certain intentionally nationally determined contributions and said that we will be sticking to 3 different set of targets. Now I want you to comment what these 3 targets are according to the Paris climate deal. I want the exact numbers to be commented. Please do that. So in tandem with this NAPCC, which we have discussed in our basic classes, please go back and refer those notes. What else can we do is what we have to concentrate in this article. Now, without destroying nature, felling trees, emptying our oceans, what can we do? This is the question that is in front of us. Ecosystem restoration. This can be possible with certain principles. The first one is our economic models should move towards circular economy, that is recycling our whatever materials that we are using. And in order to do this, it can't be done in silos. We need something called the whole of society approach. Whole of society approach means that not only the citizens but the civil society bodies should also be partners in the new model of development. They must give citizens a voice in this far-reaching decisions whenever they create opportunities for future industries that generate this prosperity in a sustainable manner. So our economic models should move towards this sustainability. They must ensure that these transitions are fair, equitable, they create jobs to whoever are losing out because of this transition towards sustainability. So when this is done, the resulting synthesis communicates how climate change and biodiversity will actually be handled by the framework of this sustainable development goals. Time and again, we are reiterating the strategies that we should be adopting, but all it takes is a commitment by the government as well as the civil society bodies and citizens to understand the gravity of the situation that we are in, to protect our ecosystems for the future. So that is the gist of this article.